Welcome back to the Marquee Media Studio with Mark Haney, igniting the entrepreneurial revolution with the HaneyBiz Project.
Welcome back to the HaneyBiz Project, brought to you courtesy of Hub International and Allegiant ABS. I'm Mark Haney, and today I am joined by Sue Ann Van Dermyden, the founding partner of Van Dermyden Maddox Law Corporation. How you doing, Sue Ann?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me here, Mark.
I am glad you are here, and you've heard the previous discussion between Kim and myself. Thoughts? What's your reaction to our conversation? Is that the truth, or are we in a different world?
No, we're in the same world. Kim's a genius. I've worked with her a long time, and that's my world too in some respects. I don't do HR. I'm not a plaintiff's lawyer. I'm not a defense lawyer. I'm somewhere in the middle of this unknown territory of what we call a neutral workplace investigator, and then we do campus sexual assault investigation. So my book is similar to Kim's, maybe a little more, what's the word, racy?
Okay. Oh, this is going to be fun. Okay, so let's talk about that racy entrepreneurial journey. So you started this very significant law corporation many years ago. How did you get the entrepreneurial bug, and what's the company look like today?
Oh, wow. Well, I'd love to be able to say, I for all the women out there, I'd love to be able to say I had this perfectly devised plan when I was age 5. This is what I did. And from there, I built all these networks. It had nothing to do with that. I sort of, as Kim talked about, started, I was a farm girl in North Dakota, and I moved to California, and then I went to college, and I went to law school. So I was kind of that gangplank that she talked about, and eventually I fell in the water of lawyership. But I love it. I have a fantastic team of 17 lawyers, and we do all workplace investigations and campus sexual assault investigations.
Do you love the law? I mean, obviously you're in this specific niche of the law, but did you always think, I love the law? I like to argue.
No, I'm not one of those constitutional lawyers that really likes to debate all the different laws. I'm just more of a practical person. I show up to work at my desk, and this lands on my desk. What do I do? That's really my skill and my interest in what I really love, and I think that's what we do for employers. And you talked some with Kim about the Me Too movement. That's one aspect of what all employers are dealing with. But there's a lot of landmines for employers across the country, but in particular California.
Well, you mentioned the word racy. So let's get into some of that racy stuff. What do you run into where some of us might go, wow, you deal with that?
All right. Well, I feel like I should do a caveat. If we're going to go racy, I think it's only fair that I say that, we can have fun. I'd like to have fun. You can have fun in the workplace, but the work that we do is very real. It has very serious implications for employees and employers, and so I don't mean to make light of that as we talk about raciness. Mm-hmm. That being said, I have the greatest job, and Kim does too, because people do such bizarre things. It's surprising what people do. If you were to say to me one day that the most powerful person in the entire United States would do, well, maybe not the most, but one of the most powerful people in the United States would take pictures of themselves, of their junk, and send it out, I would say, no, that couldn't happen. And guess what happens? And
they still keep on going. They're still high-profile people.
Yes.
The one that was famous, I mean, there's so many famous ones out there right now. The one that I think was most as disturbing as any of them to me that I can remember is the gymnastics coach doctor that examine the young gymnast. My daughter was a high-level gymnast, and I just think these kids are so vulnerable. Sometimes these terrible things happen to the people who are most vulnerable. Right?
Yeah, and so you're talking about two different things, I
Okay.
think. And no, it's the same thing from the standpoint of people can engage in bad behavior that is not, good in the workplace. And what
Yeah.
you're talking about there is, I think you're right. You're talking about a position of power, and even more so in maybe the sports world, because there's a huge age dynamic potentially, and that coach or that doctor has in part the ability to help them with their dream, their career.
Right.
And you're talking about young kids in some instances that don't always know where the boundaries are. They don't always recognize it as it progresses. It's particularly troublesome when you're talking about really vulnerable people, but in almost all instances you have a power dynamic.
Right. So in the workplace, the CEO has this power, so he or she really does have, it's not so obscene necessarily as, the gymnastics story with children, but it still can be, someone could feel helpless, and then they go to HR and complain, and when those complaints happen and they don't know what to do, we call Kim Silvers, but I mean, when it escalates, when it is something egregious, it can bring in somebody like yourself to help figure it out.
Right.
Well, give us an example of what that might look like.
Well, it can be any number of things, right? So it can be the night shift technician that says, I'm going to kill 19 people here and I have a list. And the employer says, whoa, I don't know. Did they really say it? That's the first question. Did they actually do that? And then do they have the list? That's one piece. So we can go in and do that investigation. And then you may need to bring in a threat assessment expert to determine whether or not they will actually kill the 17. So it can involve workplace violence. It can involve the treasured, the bookkeeper for the last 17 years who's accused, or you see irregularities and they're accused of embezzlement. It can be a conflict of interest, or it can be, as you mentioned with Kim, the Me Too movement, some sexual harassment kind of claim, discrimination, retaliation. And what we do is we come in and we answer the question for the employer: did the conduct more likely than not occur? And if it did, was a violation of the policy, which then allows them to take whatever's corrective action or not, to have a response that's commensurate.
So you typically will help. You're on the side of the business person or the business people typically, or is that 100%? No.
No.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you
on the
for
other
asking
side.
that question. Yeah, that's the big question. So there's defense lawyers and there's plaintiffs lawyers, and we're neither. We are what is considered an impartial workplace investigator. We have no interest in the outcome. We're not spinning the facts in the most favorable to the plaintiff or the defendant. We try to see facts, because there's almost always facts on both sides, and then we resolve it by a preponderance of the evidence. And what's so, I think, fascinating about our job is that for people pleasers like me, I think you and I would do well at a party together. It sounds like we like people.
Yeah.
Almost always one or both parties don't like what we did, because we have to make really difficult findings. And so we then, if there's a lawsuit down the road, we will then be sort of star witness A, and we testify, here's the good faith process we went through to reach this reasoned conclusion upon which you, dear employer, relied upon.
Right. So when you go in to do your investigation, who do you talk to, and then how do you actually get it resolved? Because don't we typically on both sides want to avoid taking it all the way to a jury trial?
Okay, good question. So who do we talk to? We start with what we call the complaining party, right? And we find out who they think has relevant information to their concerns. And of course, we'll talk to what we call the respondent, the person who's being challenged with some misconduct of some form, and then any other witnesses who have relevant information. We might do site visits. We might review all kinds of documentation. There might be forensics on phones and computers, all of those things. And then we make findings by preponderance of the evidence. And you had a second question, how do you keep it then out of court?
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Do you want to keep it out? You don't care. You're indifferent on that issue. Okay.
Right. I mean, it is good. When we're doing investigations, we certainly don't want to make things worse. We'd love to be able to try to resolve it. And to the extent we can see ways in which this can be fixed, we'll provide that information. But it's really not our role to keep them out of court. We'd like to think that our process is helpful and can resolve things, but really that's not our ultimate goal.
Well, let's talk about your business. Okay, so it's scary when as an employer, we have a number of employees, and then we have a real estate company with subcontractor type employees, and all over the board, and it can be scary out there. But you're building a business as well, so you have to deal with the same stuff as the rest of us. You have employees, you have partners, you have issues in your own workplace. Well, how do you guys operate? How do you play defense when it comes to running your own business?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I think it's our best defense, I think, is preventative measures. Okay. I think, and you'll see, historically we've always known we have to do training and we have to have the right culture. And I think as the Me Too movement, there's going to be maybe a more robust training processes. Maybe you're going to do more civility training, more bystander training. But I really think it's building the right culture, leading by example, doing all these preventative measures. If you get a complaint, to take it seriously, respect it, investigate it, respond to it. But I think that's the new wave of the future. Employers are begging for answers to that.
Is your business growing? I ask that because it feels like we hear a lot more about litigation and things like that. So I would think that would make your business like a growth opportunity.
It's been phenomenal. We're really uniquely situated because there's very few firms that are only workplace lawyer investigators. There are a lot of firms that do investigations, but they're either solo shops or they have a much larger defense practice or business practice, and they have a few investigators. We have 17 lawyers, and we can't keep. We're like all investigators right now. We're turning away work.
Wow. So the biggest problem you have right now is finding the right team, the right new people to come on board.
Yes.
Wow. Very, very interesting stuff. Any words of wisdom and to us, we're the one thing I love about this show is like we're entrepreneurs, kind of like swapping stories, and that's how we learn. Any advice to us entrepreneurs about keeping our businesses safe in terms of litigation and protecting our assets from all the crazy lawsuits that could be coming out there?
Well, in how many minutes do I have? How many days do I have? I guess maybe if I were to say a couple things, it would be is to really have an understanding of where the gray areas are. And if you're going to venture out into the gray areas, as Kim described it, the game plank, to be thoughtful about it, because really there's kind of two rules. Your intent does not matter. It's how it's perceived. So while intent doesn't matter, you have to be very intentional when you are starting to venture into the gray area. And so I think those two things are really important.
Very good information. Sue Ann, I really appreciate you coming on the show. When we return, I will be joined by Steve Petty, the VP at DSA Technologies. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of Chicago Fire and Apex Appraisal Services. This is the HaneyBiz Project.